how to protect your card from fraud and getting fraudulent transactions. So besides the experience that I have from trading in the market, personal finance, and the experience I'm gaining in the real estate market, I do have a background in banking, and I first started off working in a branch, and then eventually, what a lot of people don't know is that I ended up working in the fraud department for the bank. So I kind of want to give some tips and tricks to help you prevent fraud on your card. Now, before we go over tips and tricks on how to prevent fraud and fraudulent transactions on your cards, one of the first things I want to emphasize is why you should absolutely make purchases with your credit card and never make purchases with your debit card, right? Now, when I used to work in the branch, my job was to get people to sign up for credit cards, right? And I got a lot of pushback for that. And a lot of people to this day still believe credit cards are the devil. It's the worst thing you should do. But in this video, I want to talk about why when it comes to fraud, credit cards are actually your savior, and they're gonna help you out a lot, right? Now, here's the thing, right? Let's say you have $5,000 in your checking account, right? And you have fraudulent transactions with your debit card because, you're shopping with your debit card. So somewhere along the line, your debit card got compromised. And so, fraudsters spend, let's say $4,500 on air fryers. Why are they buying air fryers? I don't know, but they're just spending the money on air fryers. And so now you have $4,500 that you have to call your, financial institution and make a claim. Now, when it comes to debit cards, since this is actual money, what typically happens is the lockup period is going to be a lot longer, meaning there's probably going to be maybe a few days or even a whole week or 2 weeks before you may even see that money back into your account. So let's say, again, that scenario, you have $5,000, $4,500 is gone, wiped out for fraud. You call your bank, and now they're doing an investigation where it could take almost up to 2 weeks for you to get that money back in your account. But guess what? Maybe your rent is due or your mortgage is due or you have bills coming up and you can't make those payments. You're really out of luck, right? Versus when it comes with a credit card, let's say you're shopping with your credit card, somewhere along the line, your credit card gets compromised. If you, make a claim and call your financial institution to dispute these fraudulent transactions, guess what? It's not your actual capital. So what typically happens is they just remove those transactions from your credit card balance, and while they're investigating it, you don't have to worry about those charges at all. And since it's not your real capital, you still have your $5,000, let's say, in your checking account. You can still pay your bills. So that can make a big difference, especially around the holidays where fraud tends to ramp up heavily, where when you're trying to make purchases and your card is getting declined and there's fraud on there and now all your money is gone, you may have to wait 2 weeks, and sometimes 2 weeks is just way too long. Versus with a credit card, automatically it's just going to be wiped out of your credit balance, and they're just going to investigate it. And if you still need to make purchases, guess what? Your checking account was never compromised. So that's why credit cards are absolutely the savior to really protect you against fraud. Now, it's not really going to stop fraud, but it's just like when fraud occurs, it's really going to protect your money. Now, when it comes to having fraud or having fraudulent transactions on your cards, one of the most common questions people have is, how did this happen, right? And this is not a question that's so easy to answer, since there are a multitude of different ways that your card may have gotten compromised. So again, in this video, I'm going to go over some of the most common ways and what you can do to avoid that, right? So starting with the first one, which is not so common, but it definitely does happen, right? So, when you go to restaurants or even room service, which is even worse, you're gonna hand in your debit card, your credit card, whatever you use. Again, I prefer credit card to protect you. But when you use your card, a lot of times the waitress or the waitress, they are having this period of time where they're away from you, and they have your card. They have your name, they have the expiration date, they have the card number, and the 3 digits on the back of the card, which are known as a CVV. Now, I'm not saying this is absolutely always gonna happen. I'm not saying waitresses and waiters and room service people are absolutely evil people, but there are some individuals who are stuck in a situation, and they may see this as an opportunity to really, take your card, and when they walk away, just jot down the numbers. It's really easy, and it's actually even worse in room service. I remember back many years ago, when I worked in room service, I'm not saying any of my coworkers did this, but they would joke about it very often, that, it kind of seemed a little suspicious that maybe they were doing that. But, it's really simple to just write the numbers down write the CVV down, the expiration date, and then, go and make a purchase, right? So definitely a way to prevent that. And this is really not a conventional idea. It's something that I kind of came up with, but I think it's something that's very effective, is simply have a sticker on the back of your card covering the CVV code. Or if it's on the front of your card, like the American Express cards, you could just cover the CVV code. So what this does is, it hides that number. So even if you go to, a hotel and you order room service, or you go to your favorite restaurant and you hand the waitress or the waiter your card, they may be able to get the expiration date and the card numbers, but the CVV code is, hidden. Now, if they peel the sticker off and they return your card, you'll be able to see, hey, the sticker on the back of the card or on the front of the card or wherever the CVV code is peeled off, and that's a little suspicious, right? Versus, if they don't peel it off, then they simply don't have access to it. So that's definitely a way to prevent fraud. Again, not saying anything or shaming individuals that work in that industry. I know a lot of individuals are honest and hardworking, but it does happen, and we just have to take steps to help mitigate the fraud that occurs, right? Now, the second thing that I want to talk about, which is probably very common, is really skimmers, right? So you probably see this on the news very often, where individuals are going to the gas station, they put their card in, and then after that their card is being denied, right? Now, this is probably one of the number one most common ways that fraud does occur, and one of the best ways to prevent that is to simply walk into the local gas station and hand in your card. I know it's definitely a pain in the neck, simply because maybe the weather is really hot, maybe it's really cold, maybe you don't feel safe getting that far away from your vehicle because you're at an unsafe, unsuitable location. But it's probably one of the best things you can do, because oftentimes there are skimmers on gas station card readers, and the bad thing about those card readers is sometimes they put it in so well that even if you tug on it a little bit, you may not even be able to notice that there's a skimmer on there, right? And again, it's one of the most common ways. Another way to kind of avoid getting fraud is if it is a gas station that's more up to date and it has a tap to pay, and you do have a card that does have that feature, the wireless contactless feature, then of course you can do that as well. So definitely, but I would try to stay away as much as you can from actually putting your card into card readers at gas stations. Definitely something that is one of the most common ways, right? Another way to prevent fraud or fraudulent transactions on your card is to avoid sketchy websites. Now, I feel like this is really easy for me to say, but I do kind of wanted to share this because there may be individuals who kind of overlook this, right? And so oftentimes, these fraudsters, they're very sophisticated, and what they do is they make websites that look 100% legit. They look identical. Sometimes they even make clones of your favorite store, right? They may make a clone of Walmart.com and simply just spell it off slightly wrong. I've even seen this a lot recently with Doc Martens. They spell the website similar but different, and you may see ads run maybe on social media to go to this website, and you go to this website, it looks identical. You don't even realize it's a fake site, and then you make a purchase, and then eventually you never get your item, and they have your card information. So one of the best ways to mitigate against having fraud or getting scammed on these websites is to always kind of do your research when you go shopping. Always just make sure it's a website that is trustworthy, and make sure you're reading the spelling correctly, because again, they make websites very identical, and they spell it slightly off where you can't even tell the difference. So definitely, again, always maybe type in on Google if this is a safe site, and also avoid deals that sound too hard to believe. I know, again, I really shouldn't have to say this, but there's been times where when I was working in fraud, where individuals were complaining, why did the cards get fraudulent transactions on there? And I'm reviewing the transactions. I'm saying, hey, did you try to purchase this? They're like, yeah, I was trying to purchase a PlayStation 5 for $1. It was a deal online. It's like, you kind of have to be a little open-minded to be a little realistic with prices. Again, a deal is a deal, but you have to kind of not fall in for these traps. Now, another common way that your card can get compromised, and this is very unfortunate, is by actually shopping on legit websites that get compromised. So you may actually go to the legit website like Target, Walmart, whatever retail e-commerce store you want to shop at, and sometimes these big companies actually do get, internal compromises. Sometimes they get hacked, or the data system gets breached. You see it all the time on the news. So even if you're doing your due diligence, you're shopping online, you're shopping maybe in the store, and your card gets compromised, right? This happens, and unfortunately there's no way to prevent that. But one thing I do want to add is that when you're making purchases, always really pay attention to your bank statement, and kind of watch this daily if not weekly, because oftentimes what happens is most financial institutions have a time frame. It's typically 60 days for you to report fraud, and if you pass that threshold, you may report the fraud and actually get declined, even if it wasn't a transaction you authorized. So let's say you're shopping at, I don't know, God knows, American Eagle, and you buy these pair of jeans, and you don't realize that 2 weeks later, there's a fraudulent transaction from American Eagle as well, or maybe some other store, and you never really check your bank statements. You kind of overlook it, and then months go by, even years go by. It could be a year or 2 years. You notice, you go through your bank statements and you see this transaction that you didn't authorize. You call your bank. Most of the time, they won't tell you that they're going to deny the case. They're going to make the case, but you're most likely not going to be approved or even see that money back. So definitely pay attention to your bank account statement. And it gets harder the more money you have in your account, because you tend to overlook the smaller purchases. But I definitely recommend that you look at things on a daily view or a weekly view, or at least, the very least, a monthly view, because again, there is a time frame to report fraud. Another tip that I recommend is that if you ever do notice that your card is misplaced or even lost, even if it's just for a day and you can't find it, immediately contact your financial institution. Most often there's an option to temporarily block your card in case you still want to find it in your household, wherever you think the location is. But it's definitely better to block the card, just in case if it's not where it's at or think it's at, and it actually is lost, then it definitely helps prevent individuals from doing any shopping or making any purchases on that card. So always, good to just call your financial institution, let them know, hey, I think I misplaced my card. Can we place a temporary block on the card? Now, going back into looking into your bank statement, something that is unfortunately very scary is that oftentimes these fraudsters may make purchases on large retail or e-commerce businesses that are very common. For example, Amazon, Apple, Target, Walmart, all the big name retailers. So they may make small purchases from these names and make it spell it out like it's the actual Amazon. So when you look at your bank statement, you see, oh, Amazon, I probably did order something on Amazon. I always order from, Mr. Bezos all the time, right? So definitely make sure that when you look through your bank statement, that's very thorough, because, oftentimes they do try to mask it under a common, payment that most people make. Like, maybe under Netflix, and you do have a Netflix account, but you don't pay twice a month for Netflix. So definitely watch out for that. With that being said, hope these tips and tricks help you with, preventing fraud on your card. Again, I typically make videos on investing and trading in the stock market. So if you want to learn where to put $10,000 right now, if you have to put it in the stock market, definitely watch this video right here.